Yo, I'm Brendan. What if we invest for dividends and then the worst thing happens? The company or the strategy that we pick that had worked for the last year or two or few years absolutely falls on its face. Our dividend payout drops, our goals are shattered, no more dividend income, we can't afford burritos and race cars anymore. How can we, instead of doing that, make a better choice of where we need to invest in the first place to prevent that kind of catastrophe? How do we maintain a steady level of burritos and race cars in our life? Well, the stock market is a lot of things, but it's definitely not wanting for more information. We have tons of data at our fingertips to help us make wise choices. And I can't predict the future any better than you can because I don't have a crystal ball, but investing in companies that have consistently raised their dividend over decades is comforting, empowering, it's confidence inspiring. They've got to be doing something right. So today, let's talk about companies that haven't just raised their dividends for 10 years or 20 years. No, those are little babies. Today, we're talking about companies who've raised their dividends for over 60 years. Generations of managers and CEOs and employees, all with the same goal, to take care of us as little old shareholders, regular people. Their job is to take care of us, to make sure that we get the dividends that we want and that they get raised every single year. Today, I'll share with you what the company is, what their track record has been for the last 60 plus years, what their current dividend amount is in dollars and cents, what their yield is. I've even made a pre-made portfolio for you, so it's easy to jump in and invest in all 14 of those if you want to do that all in one shot. And then at the very end of the video, I'll tell you how I really feel about all of these, because there are at least one, if not two, serious downsides to investing in this way, and I want to just warn you about that. For anybody who's new to dividends, here's a 20-second summary. A dividend is just a payment that's made from a company that you've invested in to you, the investor. Most of the time, dividends are paid quarterly, and as long as you own stock in the company, you're eligible to get them. But not all companies pay dividends. So everything we're talking about today, they're all obviously dividend-paying stocks, but a lot of the things you might choose out in the world of investing aren't. And so if you particularly want dividends as part of your investing life, you've got to seek them out and find them like you're doing today with this video. All right, on to the list. Let's start out with the company that has raised the dividend most consistently for the longest amount of time, 71 years. That is insane. American States Water Company. They're pretty obviously a water utility company, and to raise your dividend for 71 years is completely incredible. If you hold one share of American States Water Company, then you will get a $1.84 dividend. That dividend is paid out to you quarterly, so it's going to be divided into 4 pieces and given to you throughout the year, at the end of every quarter. And then the actual forward-looking yield, the percentage that you're getting back on your money in terms of investing X dollars, you get this back as a dividend return, is 2.4%. You get that dividend yield percentage by taking the stock price, taking the dividend yield, and dividing them, and you get that ratio. Next up is Dover Corp, and they've been raising their dividend for 70 years. Totally ridiculous. Their dividend's also paid out quarterly. The dividend amount is $2.06 per share that you own, and that gives you a yield, a forward-looking dividend yield based on the current price and the current dividend of 1.1%. Next up is Northwestern Natural Holding Company, another dividend utility company. They've also been increasing their dividend amount for 70 years. And while their actual dividend amount is similar to the other two at $1.96 per share that you own, the yield that you're getting on your money, that percentage of return you're getting quarterly, is actually 4.94%, so almost 5% in terms of a dividend yield. Pretty attractive. Next up is Genuine Parts Co. They're a retail company, and they've been raising their dividend for 69 years. Nice. They pay out quarterly like most dividend stocks do, and they actually give you $4 per stock that you hold of theirs, which equates to a 3.39% dividend yield. We're mixing up the sectors here finally with Parker Hannifin. They're actually in industrials instead of in the utility sector like most of the other ones have been. They've been raising their dividend amount for 69 years. They pay quarterly. They give you $6.52 per share that you own, but that only really equates to a 1.03% yield. Procter & Gamble is a company that we've probably all heard of before, and it's because they're such a big, well-known company that makes so many different things that you probably have in your house right now. They've actually been raising their dividend for 69 years. I had no idea until I was making this video for you. I went, wow, Procter & Gamble, you're out here. You're doing this. They pay quarterly. They give you $4.03 per share, and that equates to a 2.42% yield. Shocker, huh? Electric utility company jokes. We found another utility company that's raised their dividend for a long time, 68 years. They pay quarterly. For every share that you own, you get $2.11, which is a 1.71% yield. I think we're starting to see a trend here. Finally, a financial company. This is Cincinnati Financial. They've been raising their dividend for 64 years. They pay quarterly. For every share that you own, you get $3.24, and that means it's a 2.25% yield. Gotta to be a few more companies that you know the name of here because the next one is Johnson & Johnson. They make a ton of different stuff, probably used for small children in your life somewhere at some point. They've raised their dividend for 63 years. They pay it quarterly. They give you almost $5 for every share that you own, $4.96, and that equates to a 3.4% dividend yield. And finally, the first company that I actually have money in, and I've been investing in them for a while, that's on this list. I've finally made the list. Coca-Cola. We also used Coca-Cola recently because the battery terminals on my car were so corroded that we were afraid that it wasn't making a good connection and the car wasn't starting. Poured a little Coke on there, which is probably not a good long-term strategy. It totally ate away that battery corrosion. Crazy. Probably not the best thing for you to drink, but it's delicious. Coca-Cola has been raising their dividend for 63 years. They'll pay you $1.94 for every share that you own, and that's a 3.13% dividend yield. Not too shabby. And then these things work together, right? After you drink some Coke, you need some Colgate to then brush your teeth and get that stuff out of there. Colgate-Palmolive Company has been raising their dividend for 62 years. They pay it quarterly. They give you $2 per share that you own, and that's a 2.21% dividend yield. Lancaster Colony Corp also makes consumer products. They've been raising their dividend for 62 years. They pay it quarterly. They give you $3.80 for every share that you own, and that equates to a 2.19% dividend yield. If you've ever had canned tamales, they're probably made by these people. Hormel Foods, a lot of different canned meat products and stuff, but they've been doing it well for a long time, raising their dividend for 60 years, 60. They pay out quarterly, and for every share that you own, you get $1.16 per year in terms of a dividend payout. But what that means in a yield is 3.67%, one of the higher yields on our list so far today. Despite the name, Farmers and Merchants Bancorp is not actually about selling corn or wheat or cows. It's a financial industries company, the Bancorp part. They've been raising their dividend for 60 years, and they only pay out semi-annually. So the first one on this list that you get a dividend from them twice a year. So this amount that you get in cash, this $18.60 is going to be split in half. You get half of that kind of in the summertime, the other half at the end of the year. And even though that's a big fat number, $18 per share, it's really nice looking, that's only a 1.76% yield. Those are the 14 stocks on the list. That's everybody who's raised it for more than 60 years that I have to share with you today. But I think it's important that I share with you the downsides. Oh, before I forget, I've also made a pre-made pie for you on M1 Finance. And so I'll link that in the description. If you use M1 Finance or if you want to use them, they have this feature where they put together a portfolio for you and they call it a pie. And the pies let you invest in a single account in a bunch of different things, and it maintains the ratio of those things that you want. So if you want all these in equal parts, that's the way I have it set up right now. But you could also have it broken down to where one or two of them or a higher percentage, and then you just shovel money into it and you don't have to worry about like rebalancing that over time because it just sort of maintains it for you. It's very simple. It's a nice way to kind of visualize it and look at it. I chose M1 Finance for this because they're the easiest company that I can think of to share a pre-made portfolio with you in that way. But now on to the downsides of investing in this way. It probably goes without saying that just because these companies have increased their dividend for a really long time, it doesn't mean that's going to happen in the future. We can't count on this happening. And so we'll just keep that in mind as we progress forward. But the thing that I wanted to point out is just because they're raising the amount of their dividend every year, it doesn't mean your returns are going to go up every year. Because I think it can be a little bit misleading whenever we talk about a company that's raising their dividends. The amount that's being raised is that cash payment, which is different and can be even inverse from the actual percentage that you get from it in terms of a return. So let's say I start a company and it's publicly listed on the stock market and I sell burritos that are shaped like race cars. Let's say right now I'm paying a $1 dividend. After this video comes out, it goes super viral. Everybody wants a race car shaped burrito in their life because they're so delicious and they're so fast. And what happens? The stock price then shoots up because everyone thinks that my company is going to be really profitable. So if my dividend has maintained that $1 amount that I'm going to pay you, but the stock price has skyrocketed, now that return that you're getting, that forward-looking dividend yield, is going to absolutely crater. Maybe it was a 2% dividend before, and now it's a 0.5% dividend. The actual cash amount has stayed the same. Or I could even get on a list like this and say, well, next year I'll make it $1.01, just to make sure that I've checked the box of raising that dividend every year because I want to end up on lists like this. But are you as an investor actually getting a better return year over year? It's a totally different discussion. But the flip side of that is equally perilous because if all you do is go through a list like this and you sort it by the highest dividend yield, well, I want the best return. So I'm going to pick the ones that have the highest dividend yield, right? I want the ones that pay 5, 6, 7% in terms of a return. That way I get the best return, right? You cherry pick the good ones. That exact line of thinking is called a dividend yield trap. And it's a trap because it tricks you into thinking that you're going to go ahead and get this return. And that may actually not be the story that's being told, because in my example of my race car shaped burritos, my stock price went up and that made the dividend yield go down. But the opposite can happen too. What if my dividend stays the same at $1 per share? Then catastrophe strikes. Somehow there gets to be parts of real race cars put into the burritos instead of just bean and cheese and carne asada and all the delicious things that belong in there. Oh no, bits of carbon fiber and steel have ended up in the burrito. I've got to recall every burrito and pay out lawsuits to people who have eaten these bits of carbon fiber. Now it's a huge problem for the company and the stock price absolutely falls. Now, if you just happen to check out my company on a list online after that and you look at it and say, oh my gosh, he's paying an 11% dividend. That's amazing. I want to make 11% on my money. I'm going to go invest in this company. And you put a whole bunch of money into it. You've just been fooled by the numbers. You've fallen into the dividend yield trap. Maybe at that point, the company is so sick financially, we can't even pay a dividend. Or maybe what you don't know is we're going to cut that dividend from $1 down to 10 cents because I've got to spend so much money trying to get all these burritos back and restock companies who I've just had to have them empty their shelves and recover all this mess that's just happened. And I can't support that high dividend anymore. There's a lot of that inner working of the company that's happening that ends up being reflected in a dividend amount or in a dividend yield, but just those numbers don't tell the whole story. So we've got to watch out for that in both ways. One way that you can try and guard yourself from getting into trouble like that is a quick glance at the dividend payout ratio. Now, the confusing thing is that whenever you first look at something like a dividend payout ratio, let's look at this list, you might look at something and say, oh, look, it's got a 60% dividend payout ratio like Coca-Cola does. When I first started, I thought that that meant that 60% of the time they were paying out their dividend, sort of like a batting average, that kind of an idea. That is not at all what this is saying. The payout ratio instead is saying what percentage of the company's income is required to sustain this dividend. Specifically, it's the portion of their net income that goes toward these dividend payments. And so if you look at a company like Coke and you say, wow, 60%, almost 61% of their net income is required to maintain this dividend, that's a fairly significant amount of effort for them to put 61% towards this dividend. It's a high priority for them. They've got a good track record of maintaining it, so maybe they can go ahead and keep doing that. But wow, that's a lot of effort and energy for them to keep this up. In contrast to that, this last company on our list, Farmers and Merchants Bank Corp, they only have 17% of their net income going towards making these dividend payments. So they have actually a ton of headroom left. They've got either a lot of profit or a lot of other expenses, or somehow it's only a little bit of their net income that's required to make this dividend happen. And so some people see a lower payout ratio as a sign of safety, a way that this company can afford to maintain to continue to pay their dividends. And so if you want to use that tool, now you understand it a little bit better. There's obviously a lot of different ways we can look at these numbers and try and interpret what companies are safe, how much they'll be able to profit in the future, and how they'll be able to help us along our investing journey. But for today, I think this has been enough. If you want to know how well I've been doing dividend investing for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, watch this video next to see my latest dividend account update. Quick update for you all. It turns out that last stock, that Farmers and Merchants Bank Corp, is actually an over-the-counter stock. And so it's not offered by M1. It's not in this pre-made pie for us. If you want to, you can find a service that does trade over-the-counter stocks because they're out there. But for now, just so you know, our M1 pie only has the first 13 on the list. Thanks for watching. See ya.